Very interesting. So we've been talking about China and the United States, and something else that came out recently is the AI race between the US and China has been heating up. The two world superpowers are competing with each other for everything from, AI design hardware to software to raw materials that powers artificial intelligence. And it man, it's really interesting as I was looking deeper into it. And for the people out there that are wondering why are we talking about AI so much, it's because it's here, right? Right before we hit record, I don't want to go off topic too much, but NVIDIA just rolled out, and maybe you can explain it a little bit better. You can go ahead and explain it a little bit better. They rolled out Groot.
So Brute is a sentient based in artificial intelligence. What does that mean? That means it feels, it legitimately takes in the environment and what's external and it learns. Right. So it actually has become, and they're placing this in a robot. And so the robot's going to learn and essentially become sentient. After years, I don't know if you guys remember Bicentennial Man, but he started off as a robot that was a servant, and then eventually they turned him into a little bit less than a human.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what you're seeing the beginning stages of right now, basically with group. That's where that's at.
And I was joking around before we hit record. I said iRobot, but that's essentially
That's what it is.
what we're looking at, right? And this is
Yeah.
real. And I definitely want to look more into it, and we'll probably come back one of these weeks as it develops more and talk about it. But again, U.S. and China are the two countries that are really focusing on AI. And China, they want to be the world leader in AI by the year 2030. They've already been investing in autonomous vehicle technology. They have their own version of ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a lot further along, but hey, they have their own version of it. So very, very interesting stuff. And even more interesting, back in 2022, the United States announced a bill to ban supercomputing chips and advanced chip making equipment to China and AI specific chips. So they were just they play hating. We're not going to sell to our competition anymore. That's basically what they were doing. Um, so what are your thoughts about all this, Jeremiah?
No, I mean, I go even deeper than that. This all started probably around 20, 25 years ago. You start to see China start to have steep investments in the Caribbean and in Africa.
Yeah.
And nobody really paid attention to her. They just were there and kind of, taking over. Some African nations defaulted on debt, and China started owning more of African countries, and nobody really paid attention. But when we really start to look at it, what it is they're in the places that have heavy concentrations of cobalt, iron, right? All these materials that are necessary, tin, right? That have all the components that make up chips. So China years ago, 20, 25 years ago, started getting and acquiring the resources necessary to control the war that they're at right now. They said this has been like 100-year plan basically to take over America because they were tired of it. Right. I mean, link it to BRICS, right? BRICS nations said, well, we don't care about we're not worried about NATO. We're not worried about the United Nations. We'll create our own United
Mhm.
Nations of people that are tired of America running everything, and we want to change things up. This is something that's been growing. AI is just the next frontier that, as you continue to grow and to continue to expand, this thing is starting to be so, like they said, the war now, it won't be physical and it won't be guns shooting at people. It's
Mhm.
going to be an information war. It'll
Mhm.
be who can get to, um, I'll give people an example. Most of us aren't old enough that are watching this, but if the people that are old enough to remember, if they watch it in the 60s, the race to the moon, the
Mhm.
Russians and the United States were going back and forth, and it was like just who could get there. They put something out in space first, and then we had to go a little further. That's the same thing that's happening here. It's just in the information age, and it's totally digital. Who can be faster and who can advance to that next level the quickest? Why? Because it's market share. Why? Because it's control of the earth, basically, right? Um, China's been China's been surging. They've been growing. Obviously, we've seen a lot of things like we talked about just earlier with TikTok and things like that. They've scaled in their literacy. They're top of the top thing. They're in literacy. super intelligent workforce. The guys that are born in China got to go through the military. I'm giving like actual examples of things they've established to create a systematic takeover. What have we done here, right? That's really set us nothing. We've just had tons of money. And so what happens is though now we're starting to lack the knowledge and people are catching up. And so AI is a like you said, it's a war of the minds. And how deep can this go? Right? How does it affect us? Well, like I said, South America and Africa have the resources. So you start to see people that are controlling those two continents, and how do we move forward with that? How do we block them? You can't block someone in someone else's country. So what are you
Mm,
gonna do? You're gonna go to war to try to block somebody from something? It's it's a whole thing. And like history repeats itself. It's just in a
mm.
different phase, basically.
So in this situation, how does anybody determine who is the world leader when it comes to AI? Because you mentioned Russia and the United States. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Physically, who's getting to the moon first? Okay, that
Right.
makes sense. But here, I mean, we rolled out ChatGPT, and I was reading that when that came out, that actually took that really surprised China. They were not expecting that. Eventually,
Yeah.
they came out with their own version of it
Sure.
soon after that. But
Sure.
how does one determine like who is winning this race? And I love what you not to cut you off. I love what you said
Right.
about the market share because I know some people are like, why are they even in a race, right? But you said something big. You said market share, right? When you talk
Yeah.
about like who are people are going to go to when it comes to AI and this technology, they're going to go to the people that are most well known.
Right. No, it's 100% true. And I think that if you're really trying to scale and see who's winning, you look at who's hitting those checkpoints first.
Yeah,
How many checkpoints do you have at the end of the decade? I mean, I want people to just stop right now and look back 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you never dreamed it would be where we are now. I'd even dare to say 5 years ago, you couldn't see it. You
that's a
couldn't.
fact.
You didn't, right? In 5 years, look how far we've come. Now think about in the future, you have nano computing, right? Quantum computing, like things just start to get very much quicker, and it's an elapsed time. And so you want to see at the end of 5 years, maybe, how many checkpoints and who's collected the most first checkpoints. That's who's winning, right? China's no fool. They knew they couldn't do it on their own. They formed, right? What did they do? They formed an actual conglomerate of countries with tons of money, right? They disrupted the petrodollar. So it's not the dollar that's used anymore. Like these are the strategic things that China has been doing to attack on in the right way. I'm not going to throw a nuke bomb. I'll destroy you internally with your economy, right? I'll devalue the dollar. It's not based on anything. I'll totally devalue the dollar. Now there's 4 or 5 different currencies that are worth more than the dollar. So that's how you really look at it, man.
Mhm.
Where's your currency at? Who holds the most first checkpoints? Like who can say we did this first, right? And then at the end, I won't say standard of living because it's a different type of living for them. But I mean, essentially, and in the end, probably in the next 10 years or so, you start to see China catch up to where, yeah, they have a whole bunch of people, but it starts to look more and more and more advanced. And
Mhm.
so it's like those three factors is what I would say would determine who's the world power.
Mhm.
Because the fact that you asked that question, it's a question now. It was never a question in the past.
For
Everyone
sure.
knew US. Now you kind of have to think. You're like, well, I mean, I don't China's kind of really, really strong. Like, right. So you have to kind of stop and think. Russia's kind of and that's how
Mhm.
it is now. It's not a definite just number
Mhm.
one. Now, us as Americans will always say, right, USA number one, all that. That's great. But like literally in the world, it's not a definite thing anymore. So I think that that's very telling that you even had to ask that question. That it was never a question.
Yeah, and it's to me it's becoming a lot more balanced. The best way that I can compare it is like
Sure.
the NBA right now. It's like you got five, six teams that could all win, but back in the 90s, it was just the Bulls. That was it.
Now let's talk about that. And this is revolutionary thing, quantum leaps, right? Or black swan events that cause these things. It really actually started with in the NBA. We're relating it. It started really with the big three in Boston that nobody really talked about. That's what really
Mhm.
started it. But
For
then
sure.
Braun and them, that's what got the
Yep.
publicity, and that was a super team. everybody started realizing you got to have 2 or 3 stars on the team
There
to
it
compete,
is.
and then all the teams started doing it, right?
There it is. There it is.
And they even better, evenly, the NIL in college,
Mm.
right? You had a certain, for the longest time, and for like 12, 13 years, Alabama, you
Alabama.
were going to
Yep.
be in the championship. Nick Saban quit coaching because now you're not the man anymore. Now the money's even the game out. You
He
got
had no control.
mid-major, yeah, you don't have any control.
Yeah.
Now,
You're
if
right.
you just got money, you can recruit. And so that's kind of how it is in this economic space, you know? Things are even out. United
Mm.
States isn't. We're not far ahead of people anymore. It's pretty even. Just starting to see who wants it more and who wants to be the most innovative, who wants to put forth the most effort, right? That's why it's very important that we support Elon and his efforts, right? And I'm not trying to get off topic, but these AI and these things, these leaders like that, very revolutionary leaders, you don't have to agree with them on his politics and stuff, but innovators like that, that's going to take you. And Steve Jobs was one, right? Bill Gates was one. These type of people, you have to support them to a degree, right? Because especially Elon, he's trying to get you to Mars.
Mm.
And if that's powered via engineering and AI, and that makes that possible, that's a big check mark. That's a check mark that can never be taken. And that says here on Earth, if Earth is still standing, the United
Mm-hmm.
States kind of gets like, oh, you get
Yeah.
your credibility back,
Yeah.
right?
You get solidified for sure.
Yes. Yes.
100%. We got a couple more minutes. I just want to quickly bring up this last article, this last
Yeah.
topic regarding Apple, keeping it with AI. Apple is in talks to use Google's Gemini AI on iPhones. All right. So reports have came out that they want to use some of Google Gemini's for their new AI or for the new AI features to set to release on its iOS operating system later this year. So typically in the month of June, Apple has this conference. It's called WWDC, where they really talk about new developments that are happening within the company, new technologies, new features, and stuff like that. And it's supposed to be an exciting time for people because they come out, they listen, they're like, new things are happening. Sometimes they release new products, but typically it's information about what's to come. And so this is when it's expected that, they're going to make some type of move when it comes to AI in their platform and their phones and really the company as a whole. Because when it comes to this AI race with Apple and these other companies, they're really in dead last. They
Yeah.
haven't made any moves, and we know Apple is slow to make moves. So say all I have to say, WWDC in June, we should expect that they announce something. If they don't, it could get ugly. It can get real ugly.
It's already gotten ugly for Apple. And people like, you're an Apple hater. I'm like, no, I got stock. I got Apple stock, right? I mean, I won't have no phones. Chris got on me. I got another phone. Chris like, bro, you're not. I'm like, no, never, never, ever. But I'll say this: it's been ugly for Apple. Not that it's getting ugly. It's been ugly. You failed miserably with your headset. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys. I don't know if you're watching, but if you're watching, you failed. Like Mark dismantled you, like piece by piece, and it was all factual. That was the greatest. It wasn't even trash talking. Mark like just like he went through your whole entire product because he's been studying your product, right, and just killed it. And everyone started returning their headsets, which is crazy. Like, so that didn't do it. You then followed up 2 to 3 weeks later. You canceled the Apple Card. Done. Scrapped it. Just wasted years. That's done. Right. Apple's got to do something.
Hmm.
Maybe this with Google will get you back. You're already way behind because Microsoft's got ChatGPT. Um, and of course, Microsoft's integrated with Meta, so that's a whole thing that's going on over there. So it's like, go ahead, yeah, go ahead,
I was just gonna ask. So this Google Gemini that they want to
yeah,
add in is essentially like ChatGPT, and they just want to
yeah,
install it on the iOS. So when you update your phone, you'll have some type of AI platform
right.
on your phone, but that doesn't move me. I don't know.
They
I
need
gotta
to
see.
work.
I gotta see I gotta see the future.
They need to work on integrating it with Siri. You integrate it with Siri,
Yeah.
where Siri can give you realistic. type
Okay.
that changes it a little bit. Voice to speak integration thing like that. Okay, all right, you move with me a little bit now. Maybe that's what they're in the space that they're moving in, but it's still behind. And Apple has had this problem since Steve Jobs died. The innovation is gone. You don't have innovation. They got to
And I
find something that's going to move people. And you're an avid Apple person. I don't give a crap about Apple. Outside of the stock, I'll never own anything Apple. But you love Apple, and you're like, I'm not moving. That's a problem.
what I'm trying to say is, and how I'm thinking is, for someone that's looking to buy an Apple product, a phone or something like that, is that
Yes.
going to be the thing that's going to sell them? Is that going to be the thing that gets them over? I got to see the features and whatnot, but from what I'm hearing, I don't think so.
I mean, I don't know, man. Apple's a champion brand, and I think that the majority, and we talked about this, the majority of their user base has dropped already. Like it's dropping. You see it. Less iPhones are being sold because the allure of whatever that was in our generation, it's not there anymore. These new kids are coming up, and there's nothing to really. What are you wowing people with? There's nothing there. It's not. It's just a phone. I mean, it's nothing different. It's just a phone. You don't got emojis in it. Everybody got emojis. Like it's all the same thing. What's really different? What do you? Well, I can see your bubble on blue. Who cares? What else? What are you doing? Apple's got to come with something. I think that Google this will be a good look for them. We were just talking about. You asked why Google's not looking to do the whole TikTok thing. This is probably has a lot to do with that.
Makes sense.